James Moore, who had a long and distinguished career in U.S. government. He's now the founder and CEO of the Washington Institute for Business, Government, and Society. Jim, welcome to the program. So many questions to ask you. First of all, the fact that these talks even happened and the lines of communication have been reopened, that by itself is a good thing, isn't it? Your takeaway.
I completely agree with you. The notion that the leaders of China and the United States have not spoken even on telephone for a year is really extraordinary. And to have made this happen now, I think is significant. There certainly was a crescendo leading up to this, given the fact that senior government officials from Washington flew to Beijing. The foreign minister of China came to the United States last month. And so there was really an effort to be able to build up to this moment. But I cannot overstate how important and significant it is that they were able to get together.
As our correspondents mentioned, some of the big achievements that we saw or we heard about. What do you wanted to see from this summit, from these high-stake talks, that perhaps you didn't?
Well, I think, first of all, there were a lot of observers of China who didn't believe that there was going to be any agreement on anything except just shaking of hands and being able to talk through some things. But we saw, as was reported, an agreement in regards to fentanyl, in regards to opening up military ties, et cetera. So I think, again, the most important thing that came out of this was really opening those channels. I would bet that within the next 1 to 2 months that we're going to see President Biden and President Xi speak to one another in a way that they haven't over the telephone for a very long time.
Clearly, there are differences, Jim, and differences between these two countries. I mean, fundamental differences that may be difficult to resolve, but everyone seems to agree this is about managing those differences and at some point managing the expectations.
Absolutely. And understand that we're talking about there has to be some understanding and appreciation of coexistence between China and the United States. And that in turn asks for cooperation, and that there is a need for empathy on the part of the United States and China to be able to understand the differences that exist and where the similarities can come together.
You know, every time we see these men talk, they seem warm. They obviously shake hands. They seem to have a nice rapport. We saw it in Bali. We saw it in Woodside, California. And then after Bali, you had the whole balloon incident. Something happens and the relationship is thrown off track again. Are you optimistic this time that perhaps it will stay on track?
Well, I certainly hope so, but I think that's an important point. You know, this is the beginning of a new chapter in the history between the United States and China. And the question is, let's hope nothing comes up in the coming months that would detract from that.
And I got to ask you about the domestic issues here in the United States. We have an election coming up, and there are people here in Washington, hawkish lawmakers, who are outraged by the idea of these two countries even talking.
You're absolutely right. And I think it's important to recognize the fact, I use the word empathy, understanding. There's got to be an understanding on the part of certainly the Chinese leadership that 2024 is going to be an unusual year. There's going to be an awful lot of carping, a lot of political posturing, and China certainly is going to be a part of that dialogue that will be going on. We're going to see it on the debate stages among the candidates who are running, for example, on the Republican side. But so long as there is that understanding and we get through November of next year, I think we're going to be just fine.
Well, we certainly hope so. James Moore, thank you, sir.